but don't know me, I've started my career with the World Bank very young age, right out of school. This is in 2001. I soon was hired by Goldman Sachs when I was turning 22, 23. And I participated in the largest deal in 2005, which was the Chrysler Fiat merge. In automotive. Automotive in our family has been extremely important because we started in 1903 among the 8 founding members in Europe. Today, that is known as the FIA/Formula One. So we have a great heritage, as you can imagine. Growing up, listening to all the stories, meeting all the pilots, all the brands that tend to sponsor these large events worldwide. Today, the United States has become quite the attraction because of now you have Texas, Miami. They spoke about even having New York, New Jersey, so in Formula One, which I think it'll happen at some point. So that kind of gave me a push into where I am today. Today, as the chairman and CEO of Soriano Group, Soriano Family Office, wasn't an easy task, wasn't an easy decision to be made because I was doing just fine, and working for a family is never easy. I am the youngest of 5. My father, who's still alive and who claims not to be active at 92 years old, is still tends to tell me what to do. And so you have to, even if you're the chairman, it doesn't matter. It's your father, right? We bump heads. But I did transition the family into an era, 2009, when we were all going through the economic downturn, into a digital or digitization era of taking all our businesses and migrating them into technologies. Technologies that today, if I speak to my mom, she doesn't still know how to turn on or off a computer or her mobile phone. So we own a telecommunications company. It's called Eli Mobile. I'm actually in this moment connected to 50,000 of our followers in this company, where we have 30,000 users as of today. It's a company that is known as an MVNO, Mobile Virtual Network Operator. Some of you guys will be like, what is that? The most recent company that was very successful was Mint without the Z, owned by Ryan Reynolds, which was bought by T-Mobile, sorry, for a couple of billions. Most recent event with Forbes Iconoclast last week, where Ryan Reynolds was speaking about it was great that he saw me in the crowd and he just pointed at me and went, "You're doing it right, right?" This is where the world is going, right? The infrastructure of telecommunications today, whether you're looking at AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, which was absorbed by T-Mobile, are all investing so much in infrastructure that what we keep on hearing is, how do we go from 5G to 6G to 7G and so on? The speed of the internet that we're connected to, video streaming. How we are absorbing information today compared to 10 years ago, even at this generation, is extremely different. In this telecom company that we got involved with, what we did differently is that we became the first social operator, meaning we are what Netflix is today with an AT&T. Why? AT&T will make you pay a monthly subscription, just like you already do. Any 2 years, you would have to upgrade your phone, which means you have to finance it yourself. If you recall, maybe 8 years ago, you didn't have to do so. They would actually give you the phone for free, but today they don't longer do that. You have to buy your phone, you finance it over 2 or 3 years because they know that in 2 or 3 years time, that'll be a newer version that you want to have. And if you're paying it in small dips, you're not gonna really complain about. That's the market today. Where these companies make the most money is in accessorizing. From the cover that you put on it to the ring that you would put around it so it doesn't fall off your hand and you don't break the glass on it, and you end up buying another replacement or another phone. So as a social media operator, what we discover is that a lot of our users would want to have content. So we created a platform content similar to Netflix, where you have documentaries, where you have movies, where you have training modules similar to the ones that we all have in corporate America. Teach us about cybersecurity issues, to teach us about how to be better managers, to teach us about doing any profession just better and train yourself. And we created that platform, and it has been extremely successful. Our rate of growth from the moment that we took over the company, which wasn't that long ago, was about a year process. April of this year, we became 100% owners. And it's a proud moment because even our clients, which I told you it's 50,000 followers, 20,000 clients that we have in all over Europe, they started texting directly to the company, and we were getting feedback. I'm very happy that there's a new management with this kind of vision today. Where I'm going with this, the communication, why telecommunications is important, because you can connect with people. This leads me into social media. Somebody had mentioned Telegram, how groups are coming together. I call them the icebergs, because you are in these groups presenting your ideas, presenting your deals, and you just never know who's there. Nobody is ever going to tell you 100% of what they do, how they do it, until you really take the time to get to know these people. So in these communities, we tend to have the approach where, call it due diligence, if you will, but where you learn really more about the criteria of investments and so on. Another venture, it's Soriano Motors. I had mentioned we had started in the automotive sector. I decided to rebirth this brand, take back what was done by my great-grandfather and my grandfather, and do it better. The electrification of vehicles, the EVs, everybody's talking about this, and there's a lot of resistance still because there is not a complete understanding on how good this is. Electric vehicles, in comparison to an ICE, which stands for internal combustion engines, on a life term of that vehicle itself, produces about 1/5 of the green gas emissions. We are facing with a climate change. It is clear, scientifically researched, scientifically proven that since the 50s and last 60s and last 40 years, we have incremented almost by 600% the amount of CO2 in the environment. Question, does anyone know how this is measured in our planet? No. Our satellites that we use outside of Earth shoot laser beams into the planetary surface. And based on how quick and how visible that laser beam is, we're able to measure how dense the green gas emissions are. Now, green gases are good for us. Don't get me wrong. Carbon dioxide is needed in order to maintain our planet warm, because otherwise we'd be living another ice age like any other planet in the solar system, and nobody to survive. But too much of it is causing this over global warming. Global warming is causing droughts. We hear the news, we see it is happening everywhere. Floods. Just 2 weeks ago, we had another flood down in Brickell, Miami. Now, it seems normal, but it's not. We have also heat waves. We're happy to have a heat wave right now. And so these things are happening every day in our lives to kind of alert us that it's really bad. But the scientific community is telling us, this is it, guys. Either we do something now, or we're going to have bigger issues. So the COP28, if you're not familiar with this is something that takes place every November worldwide. It just moves to different. Started out with the Paris Agreement. The next one is, the last one was in Dubai. The next one is going to be in Azerbaijan. These are the conversations you really should listen to, because these are the most educational in terms of why is EV such a push at a global scale today. And now we're being told that by 2030, 2035, 2040, we should all go electric. I know a lot of you guys, because I have the same problem with my own family, are being resistant to the fact that to go from engines and motor sports to the noise and the grease and the dirt that we're used to going to something cleaner. It's a problem. How to convince people? Number one, educating them. Number two, create leadership in industries. Even at this Forbes iconic class where you had guys very important, Kenneth Griffith, Harvey Schwartz, Ryan Reynolds, Jay Penske. I mean, all of these big entrepreneurs and industrialists of the world do not have a clue yet how to do it. That's a problem. That's a problem. We're a small company, but hopefully, and this goes back to a story I heard way back about a kid walking down the shore with his dad, and all these starfishes were washed ashore, and the kids start throwing them back. I mean, I'm talking millions of them. And the father says to the kid, "What are you doing? You're not making any difference. There's a million of them." And the son answers back to the dad, maybe not all of them, but to the ones that I'm throwing back in the sea, I am making a difference. So even though we're small, and I said this in the most respectful way, what you're saying, what you're doing, it is making an impact in our society. Educating ourselves is part of life. Transmitting this message properly to the people is also our responsibility, because this is our planet. This is where we have children. So it's a point of reflection. What I'm going through, as I have 4 children, and these kids, I want to leave them not just money, because money doesn't do anything if the planet is destroyed. And I know we talk about money, we talk about returns, and we talk about how bad some of the ESG frameworks are. And I would probably agree with you too. But in the midst of all that, there are good people doing great things. It's just a matter of, getting in there and learning. And this forum, why I like to come here and support Marty's crusades, which is in many different cities, is the fact that it brings a lot of intellectual people, a lot of people with a lot of money as well that can make a difference. So I hope that my example, my actions, what we're doing in the world today with our electric vehicles, with our telecom, with whatever we're doing in real estate, incorporating all these different technologies, makes a difference. So if there are any questions, I'd love to start getting them. Yes.
What about how you been?
Great. Thank you. Personally, great.
Yeah. You remember us?
Yeah, of course.
You have an automobile company, electric vehicle company. Can you tell me how big it is, and if you could replace batteries if you can eliminate the lithium in the battery, how would that technology be to you?
So is there any family here invested in metals at all? Metals. Okay. So the 3 metals that are used the most in any type of automotive, especially in batteries manufacturing, are lithium, cobalt, and copper. Now, by far, these are the best investments you can make if this is the sector that you're looking at, because the demand for this is tremendous, and it's just going to be huge over the next 20, 30 years. It's mandated for companies to do. Our company is now manufacturing more than 100 units a year. We are looking to scale to 500 over the next 3 years. I like to stay niche and nimble, also because we're a made in Italy product, and being made in Italy's got an artisanal craftsmanship approach. So I cannot compete with, the likes of any Japanese company, Korean or Chinese company, and I don't want to. But in doing so, we can adhere to newer technologies much faster, because bigger companies tend to be extremely bureaucratic, So it takes them longer to find better solutions. And you see this because every year that you buy a car, even though it's a newer version from a newer year, doesn't change much. Maybe you have power windows and or you have leather seats, but that's about it. Another point, due to thematic research with artificial intelligence, everybody's mentioning this, is the theme everywhere this year. AI will consume 5 times more what an ICE carbon footprint does in the world on the long term. So the need to switch to electric or renewable energies is needed because otherwise we're way overheating this planet. There's a limitation, and it has been already set by all the scientific community. 1.5 Celsius on average per year is what we can do. Anything above that, that's about 34.5 Fahrenheit. Anything above that, we're really, really messing up this world. And we are at that critical point right now. The data is out there. I suggest you research it, you read it, and you really talk to the right companies that are doing something right. So yeah, so we are in market with the product. It's a fun product, I gotta admit, because we're involved in racing. We have a lifestyle component, which we have digitized and virtualized as well. Kind of teaching the automotive industry how to go through a prototype phase much faster than 2 years, because that's usually what it takes. And getting the feedback from the market so that we know if we should go into manufacturing production or not. Yes, miss.
I'm sorry, I missed, what is the car company that you are working on now?
The company is called Soriano Motori, like motor with an I. And
In cars, motorcycles?
we're doing motorcycles, scooters, and bicycles, and I'm already projecting to do the first car probably in another 3 years with the group Zagato, which is a well-known group as well. They've worked with Lamborghini, Aston Martin, and Maserati.
There's lots of new battery technologies on the market right now. Are you looking at other technologies that are mining centric, for example? It seems like there's so and all kinds of products, right?
I think in time, technologies as they have already advanced. We went from cylindrical batteries, which you're all familiar with it, to circular batteries, which we use in most of our phones, to cells, right? Rectangular batteries. And these have a much better high voltage capacity as well, allowing it to have better performance and a better range. And this is some of the questions that you may have. How long can I go on this vehicle until I have to worry about recharging it? The other question is the infrastructure exist? Where can I do it? Europe, Asia, 10 years ahead of what the US is doing, by far. I can guarantee you that. So, but that doesn't mean that we're behind in the sense that that's an investment opportunity because you have so much room to grow. That's part of the whole point. But do we do it ourselves or do we let somebody else do it for us? That's, I think, the paradigm that is being discussed with the current administrations, as you know, it's one is pro and another one is against.
You manufacture in Italy?
We manufacture in Italy, and that we became by essence the first OEM. And the other OEM that does this is Pagani, but that's an ICE car, hypercar.
So what other industries do you invest in, Marco?
I'm sorry?
What other industries?
Anything that is synergistic through the supply line. I mean, we have over 100 suppliers from parts, components, from metals, because we use aluminum, titanium, copper, cobalt, lithium, batteries, you name it. So anything that is within that tier 1, tier 2 manufacturing production, we use. In telecom, we don't have to really worry about much because in telecom, the carrier, the contractor does it all. The satellites, the antennas, I don't have to worry about that. Got a question, Jason?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's like any anxiety with hydrogen technology pacing.
No. As a matter of fact, that we're investing in one in Norway. They're really ahead of the scale on this, but what hydrogen cell fuels is going to be used for mostly are airlines, the aviation industry, as well as the cargo ships, not so much the cars, the motorcycles. It just doesn't make sense. Space-wise. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier you're investing in blockchain and Web3.
Yes.
Are you like a direct investor in businesses, venture, or can you just talk a little bit about
Yeah, so
sort of one or two?
yeah, sure. Of course. About 8 years ago, blockchain started really becoming a thematic research, just like today AI is for us, right? And I got very curious to understand what Web3 is. And I met these guys out of Microsoft that had worked for Bill Gates, and they were telling me all this technical stuff, and my head was exploding. So, guys, hold on. We need to like take it back. How do we do this? Blockchain today, what we consider Web3, and what I called in a book that I wrote, the gamification of your business is literally thinking about your consumer in the future. How are we making smart decisions to consume? Now, all of you guys do the same now. You research on the internet, maybe you talk to a friend, but it's mostly research on the internet because that's really how we do it. In the old days, my dad would probably call his friends. I call my friends and we make a decision based on that. Sometimes we do that, but that's not the only approach. Consumers have become extremely smarter from that perspective. But what is this next stage? This 3D, this metaverse, these things like this gaming that you're listening to, is basically you take your business and you show it in a virtual way. Imagine the company that we own, for example, projecting motorcycles. I can come up with 100 different designs, but how do I know which one of those designs I should really produce? And that's where this makes a big difference. Also helps that B2B market because the distributor that has the dealerships that is selling to you has an additional tool that can showcase everything about the motorcycle, everything about the car, everything about the airline or the boat. And you can make a smarter decision. So this is how it's being used in our case. The other matter here is that we have set up a payment program or adaptation of this technology so we can accept payment in cryptocurrencies. Does any of your companies here, please raise your hand, accept cryptocurrency as a form of payment? Besides these two gentlemen. So technological adaptation has always been an issue. Technological adaptation speed, which is what we're looking at today, for example, S&P 500, right? It's already known that this is research banks that in the next 10 years, 50% of the companies listed are going to be delisted. Last year alone, we had 6 companies delisted. Now we're talking about NVIDIA, Microsoft being the most expensive companies, and that's projected to grow over the next year or so. This is all research that you already probably read. So how are you positioning yourself? How do you know what's going to happen? How are you adapting to this new technology besides talking about it? So I think at this point, I can say that our companies are all fully adapted to these technologies. It doesn't mean that there's newer stuff that's going to come up and I'm not going to be able to do it, but it's a matter of time with batteries, with the way metals cost, recycling, green gas emissions, any type of support that government will be given in this instance, we're looking at all of the possibilities to continue our work. Yes, sir.
Marco, is there a difference between the carbon footprint of making a motorcycle electric or a regular motorcycle?
Yes, 1 to 5. Over a lifetime period, the output is 1 to 5 in comparison.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I actually wrote down some of this stuff. So transition away from fossil fuels, like I had mentioned about that 1.5 degrees Celsius. We need to maintain that limitation. As AI is growing, this EV, the automotive sector, has to happen. Otherwise, it's just too much. There is global stock take, they call it, which is measuring the emissions reductions. This is a hard thing to know exactly what is the footprint that we have in our production, in our companies, anywhere in the world, really. There are voluntary set-offs or offsets that you have heard about. For example, for an X amount of carbon dioxide you're putting in the planet, you should plant a tree. So now charities or reforestations, foundations that are happening. Because what happens now? And let's have this perspective. The civilization today, our current amounts of people in the world are about 8 to 9 billion. Yes. We know that in the next 10 years, we're going to add another billion people to this planet, which means that obviously real estate will be amazing because we need to build multi-families. People need to live somewhere, whether it's an urban area or segregated area, whatever it may be, suburban, it will happen. But they are also producing not only garbage, but this CO2 footprint. So how is this, as we're growing exponentially at this point, because the last time it took 100 years about to add another billion to the civilization. How are we addressing that? So these conversations that are being had, Davos, Switzerland, the COPs, to some extent the G7s and the G20s of the world should be heard. There should be topics that we need to discuss. But apart from discussion, if you have companies, you should look into how to integrate yourself with these solutions because you can make a difference just like we are trying to.
You make a point, Marco, and this has to do with the climate situation that you're describing. Earlier, there was a discussion on energy, and the young lady pointed out that we're going to need another 22 million barrels a day or something to that effect in order to partially meet the energy requirements of the world. Given those requirements, and they're not being met, that will not be sufficient.
Yeah.
How are you going to address the energy problem and offset? Because fossil fuels can provide that.
Yeah.
Non-fossil fuels don't exist.
Well, non-fossil fuels, you're talking wind, solar energy that is being used today, right? So as energy, understood, as energy technologies are being integrated, I think somehow there should be a balance. I'm not saying stay away from fossil fuels because we need them. Imagine tires. I mean, who's building vehicles without tires? And that's probably the dirtiest business in the world. What do you do with that? We do need them, but it's about collaboration. It's about having an understanding how we reach a balance. And, at this point, frontiers should not be a problem. It should be, we're one people, one planet. Let's fix this because otherwise, unless you're thinking to move to Mars, when Elon Musk allows that to happen, by all means, go for it. But in the meantime, we're here in this planet, and I think we should really be careful with what's happening. Yes.
It's just an observation. So last summer, I took my family to the Phoenix area. Yes, in the summertime. Yes, it was very hot. Through some Indian reservation and some desert area, no solar panels. And I couldn't believe it. My wife said, well, that's because the politics of Arizona is such that the oil companies aren't allowing it, or somebody's not allowing it.
So are you observing that? Lucid Motors came out of that. Remember Phoenix, Arizona? Lucid Motors, which is a big competitor to Tesla right now, has moved because it was financed by the PIF to Saudi Arabia now. They're in Riyadh. A great American company moves out of here because of politics. Yeah. So clearly our politics do have an influence in companies. California, Tesla left. Now they're in Texas. And this is what's happening. When the political system fails and companies that could do good don't see it, they leave. Yeah. The billionaires of New York left New York because it just doesn't work out here. Taxes as well. Yeah. So there needs to be a balance. And I think this is part of the conversations that we're going to see on the debate this Thursday, which is going to be pretty interesting to see what each of the candidates that we have will have to say about this.
So we got about 5 minutes. Howard, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, Howard.
You have so many different parts of your company.
Just out of curiosity, and you don't have to answer it if you want to keep it proprietary. How many employees do you have here in the United States and how many are in Europe?
So there's people on payroll and people that are consultants, and then there's people that are through outsourcing connected.
Right.
All together, probably about 300 people.
So you're very nimble.
Oh, yeah. It's just, you know how hard it is to manage people? Headache after headache.
Can you talk about how ready Europe is for the work that you're doing versus the United States and what, and when we were just, you were just talking about political environment, you know, in terms of what you're trying to accomplish?
I think as a whole, the EU is got a level of consciousness to these changes probably 10 years ahead of the United States. Sadly to say, because I live here, my kids are born here, and I have to explain that to them. But it's a matter of this. It's a matter of really talking to the right people and teaching people what's going on. And I think
But your strategy fits in very well with the EU in terms of your readiness for what you're doing.
Yeah. For the strategy, I mean, we're a made of Italy product. Anything made in Italy has a luxury premium tag to it. So we're not exactly, I'm not the Volkswagen of the world. And there's a reason I did it that way, so that I don't have to compete with these guys. But if you have a choice and you have means to buy yourself a Ferrari versus a Tesla, you don't even have to answer. I already know that. Yeah. So the idea is to create a trend, a pattern in the market with a lifestyle component. And that's what my vision is.
I see a lot of youth riding electric bikes. And this is really picking up popularity now. They get a lot more freedom. Is there any form of potential crossover that you don't push that trend where you luxury kind of electric bike?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you see if the motorcycle is a means of utility versus a recreational thing, right? And then motorsports as well, because that's promoting it a lot. So we're involved in all these different sets or settings until the market manifests itself. I really can't give you who's my precious client as of today. I have no idea, because I've got guys that are in their 70s, and probably the youngest client that we had, I think he was 22, a Bitcoin guy. So great.
I think I know that guy. Fantastic. Last question. Any more questions? Well, Marco, thanks so much. We're gonna, hopefully we get dinner.
Thank you.
You also can all contact information, etc., to the audience. If you want to send me a deck, I can make it available on the mail.
That'd be great. If you want to be part of this with me, by all means, you're all invited to.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Cheers.
So,
Thank you.